It is a gorgeous Easter day and I'm out in the car, not breaking any rules. It's my daily exercise combined with my shop to go and get food for the Easter holiday. And it's looking lovely. London is gorgeous with hardly any cars and very few people. And you can see all sorts of places. There above me, one of my favourite churches in the city. Just round the corner from me is where Chris Blackwell used to live, the founder of Island Records and a major person in the music industry back in the 60s and 70s, dear old Chris Blackwell. Welcome to day 20 of my coronavirus diaries, geriatric 1944. It's Easter Sunday. Yes, indeed. We've managed almost 3 weeks of these diaries. And if you add a couple of weeks ahead of it when I was self-isolating, I've now been self-isolating for about 5 weeks. And it's beginning to get boring, as I'm sure you're finding these diaries every day. But let me try to get you excited and try to keep you going. I thought today I basically discuss the communications issue, because I've always been involved in communication. I've always found it fascinating how people communicate with each other. Mostly I've tended to use music and lyrics, but I've also been writing a lot. Back in the 60s, I used to write a column every week for a paper called Disc and Music Echo. Well, originally it was Music Echo, founded by Bill Harry up in Liverpool in the middle 60s, and then Disc took it over and it became Disc and Music Echo. I then started writing for numerous other papers. I ended up writing a weekly page in The Sun called Bizarre USA every week for about 10 years. So I've done a lot of that communicating, and I've also done television when I had TV series, numerous ones, Entertainment USA and No Limits, which was number one on BBC Two for week after week back in the 80s. Those are my happy memories of the days gone by. In the 90s, I founded something called the Tip Sheet. And I founded this because Radio 1 had just completely changed its direction and had become a sort of station that was meant to appeal only to the young and to specialist music lovers rather than to general music lovers. And I thought I needed to start something that would actually alert people to great music that wasn't necessarily specialist. So I founded this thing called the Tip Sheet. And very shortly after I founded it, I was persuaded by Paul Scaife, who worked for me, to start up an online message board and forum and everything. And that's where we started King of Hits, which is still going as kingofhits.com. That had the tip sheet that people could tip great music on. And it's been going for around 25 years more now. It's one of the oldest established and still much viewed forums and boards on the internet. I got very hooked into this. I thought this was a fascinating way to develop things. And of course, then everything in my life tended to change. I was suddenly arrested for crimes that had never happened, which I thought were ridiculous and I would therefore be acquitted. Oh, I was wrong. I had faith in lawyers and the system and police and everything else, and I was convicted. And so after I came out of Her Majesty's prisoner state, I realised that I was not going to get anything listened to or heard or anything else in traditional media, so I'm going to have to concentrate on online, which I did to a huge degree and with great success. We always had about 15,000 people a day logging on to King of Hits and reading my ramblings and listening to music and all the rest of it. I also was very early on YouTube and struck up a relationship with a company called AWAL, stands for Artists Without a Label, where I could put all my music on, and I had various copyrights, not just my own, but a lot of other people's as well. And they started selling my music like crazy online. But in those days, it was all downloads or iTunes, and the sales weren't enormous. It was a small percentage of the monies that one could make. That mainly you made money through vinyl sales in record shops, but times changed very, very rapidly. And these days, I get a healthy 4-figure sum every month, thanks to AWAL and my old copyrights. But I've continued to try and irritate people and wind them up by occasionally doing things that are a bit controversial. And one of the things I did that was most controversial about 15 years ago was just after the Harold Shipman situation, where Harold Shipman was thrown into jail. And again, the media went into overdrive and hype, just like they've done now with coronavirus and that they did with Brexit and everything else, and exaggerated the facts. And whereas Shipman was probably a doctor who sort of basically practiced euthanasia and was probably also a serial killer to a certain rather small degree, he was boosted into this enormous monster, the worst serial killer of all time, by the media, which I thought was rubbish. So on this happy Easter Sunday, I commemorate the fact that people can be hoodwinked into all sorts of things, like the life of Jesus Christ, for a start. That's why Easter Sunday is rather significant. You tell people things enough times, they will believe it, even if they're fantasy. I'd like to play you, as we leave my day 20 of Coronavirus Diaries, I'd like to play you my track, which is still available and you can get it if you want to, the true story, or actually the likely true story, of Harold Shipman. See you tomorrow.
Good morning to you. I want you to hear the likely true story of Harold Shipman. You'll wake in the night, you'll be shaking with fright, but for God's sakes don't fall for a media demon. Some people will sigh when they're waiting to die. Won't you please speed it up as I'm starting to cry? There's one thing he ain't, and that's saviour or saint, but a pleading complaint didn't pass him by. Most people I know are not black and not white, but a blend of all colours, of darkness and light. A caricature isn't fair, isn't true. Any real human beings, part me and part you. Police will inflate, and the law says it's fine to accommodate tabloids with a solid headline. But a real psycho monster who's killing for fame would leave notes for a claim to establish his name. Good morning to you. I want you to hear the likely true story of Harold Shipman. You'll wake in the night, you'll be shaking with fright, but for God's sakes don't fall for a media demon. For God's sakes don't fall for a media demon. That's the likely true story.